and unto you. Very gentle answer. That solves all the problem. So if we understand these lessons, this in the 21st century, we will not tarnish the image of Islam. Today the Muslims
will definitely live in a peaceful world.
In a peaceful world. Today we are tarnishing the image of Islam, overreacting for certain provocation, to which we should only say, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا.
Tarnishing the image of hatred in the religion.
And then I said to the other thing, before we conclude to this question is, another attribute that's very much needed is the attribute of contentment. The Prophet ﷺ also taught us how to be contented.
To be satisfied with
to be satisfied, what we call qana'ah. You see, today in 21st century, the vices of capitalism, it is why, because we are in trouble. Today when you go to the richest of the rich, they are insecure because of what they call credit crunch. The Prophet ﷺ informed us long time ago that if you look at this world and you focus on this world, you will never get contented. لا يملؤ بطن ابن آدم إلا التراب. He said the belly of mankind cannot be satisfied except by the soil when you are put out there. So the more you have, the more you want more. That's why the more the rich is getting
richer and richer,
and the poor is getting poorer. So qana'ah is very important. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that this world in which we live is just like somebody passing. And then don't focus on this world, but make sure that you get contented with the little you have. The more you get contented with the little you have, the less you have grudge, the less you have envy, the less you are angry with people, and the more you focus on ibadah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And today, when you look at what is going on, you can see the contentment and the role that contentment can play in the 21st century, especially in economic exploitation and social degradation. And lastly, I said too, the Prophet also taught us what we call self-reliance. Self-reliance is very, very important.
Yeah.
He said, he said, look, don't focus on what is in the people's hand. Because the moment you follow people, then you will be possessed. You will never get your independence. Try to get independence by working very, very hard. He worked alcoholic. He used to work very hard to get independence, because when you now follow what is in the hands of people,
when you rely on people, they enslave you.
They enslave you. That's why today you have 21st century slavery.
It's happening. Yeah.
It's happening. Why? Because you are not to focus on work and on self-reliance and independence, but you always seek others' support. The moment you seek others' aid,
when people become tired, they enslave you.
They enslave you. And lastly, issue is about, just to mention, because I'm just telling you about the attributes of gentleness. But he also was very brave. When it comes to the other side, he was very, very brave. Don't just look at him like gentle, like whatever. When it comes to the truth, when it comes to haqq, he was so brave that he will not compromise when we come truth. He will never, he was not a leader who would send others and say, go, and then I'm behind. No.
Stay behind.
No. He will be the one in the front line. He, in Uhud and in Hunayn, many of the brave companions ran away, but he was the one who remained there. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Very adamant.
So he was very brave when it comes to truth. So these are the things I say to in a nutshell that I can tell you about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which if we relate it to the 21st century, you will have a lot of solution to the problems that we are facing, and it is the best socio-economic political problem solution that we have with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Like you said, it's very difficult to talk about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because his attributes are just too many, but you've really tried and summarizing. Okay, regarding the commemoration of his birth, I mean, there are divergent views about it. Some grossly condemn it. They argue that after the Prophet's demise, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in 632 AD, his successors to the throne, they never commemorated his birth, and yet they were very dynamic, articulate people. Others also try to justify this commemoration by also arguing that since the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a role model, he nurtured the illuminated the religion, nurtured it and allowed it to bloom, and it's just through such gatherings talking about his exemplary character, the virtues virtues that he possessed, that people will really get to know him more and then see him as a role model. So your reaction to this two-sided opinion?
Thank you very much. I think in each side, there is something which is true and also something which is false. You know, those who disregard, or at least those who talked about, those who reject Gammo,
condemn it grossly.
Those who reject Gammo, generally, they are making a grave mistake. Because you just cannot come and judge Gammo, generally, without judging what happens in Gammo. When you come as a scholar and generalize judgment, you are doomed to make mistake. When you come and say, okay, Gammo is haram, then you are doomed to make mistake because it's not haram, because haram is something that you quote out of the Quran or out of the Sunnah. Because haram is a text that prohibits things. But the fact that the Prophet did not do it, or the fact that the companions did not do it, is not an indication of hurma. Okay, so those also who hold it wholeheartedly, without screening what is going on in Gammo, they have also made mistakes, because there are certain things in Gammo, because Gammo means what? To commemorate the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If it means to go and remind people of the values and the virtues that we have just pointed out, if you go to be visionary, as the Prophet was, because the Prophet ﷺ was very visionary, because his sunnah is a living sunnah. Every generation needs to take out of it vision, you know, for what is coming next. If Gammo means to be visionary, to mean, okay, how do we relate to our day-to-day life? Then there is nothing wrong with that at all. And there are some scholars here who, of course, take a verse of the Quran, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, of course, as the basis of talking about the Prophet, the stories of the Prophet during these days. And I think, for me, as long as the gathering is to call to remind people of the Prophet, rather than reminding people of your great-grandparents, or reminding people of your own self. If the gathering is not just to come and to collect money, and to allow men and women mingling, going like that, as long as that is not the case, is to come and remind people of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to turn it to a living sunnah as a visionary leader who set examples of socio-economic examples at the family and at the governance level, that there is nothing wrong with that. So it's very difficult for any scholar to come and condemn generally. The moment you condemn generally, then you are making a grave mistake. Because what you are saying is not true. Anybody who says that Gammo is haram is not telling the truth. Anybody who says that Gammo is impermissible, is makruh, is also not telling the truth. But when you say, okay, if these things happen in Gammo, then it becomes unacceptable, then I will agree with you. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ is someone whose life is our example, and this example should be told to the new generation for them to know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because there are things that in his biography that examples of as a visionary leader, examples of gentleness at the family level, examples of good governance, all these things are there, and if you don't tell the new generation, they will not be able to do that. That's one thing. The second thing is, the young people, you either substitute their activities with something, or you let them go astray. For example, in any feast, you either give them a good example of the Prophet, or you allow them to go something else. So that is why
to be immersed in something
else. And I think if Gammo can be organized to make sure that it is to reunite people around the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, then there is nothing wrong. But I think the way it is done should be revisited in the sense of relating to our lifestyle, relating to our day-to-day life. When you go back to your family, you take from the fountainhead of the Prophet ﷺ to solve your problem, but not just to talk about the Prophet as philosophical ideas where we cannot relate. These are the things that definitely we can revisit in Gammo and make it a perfect Gammo where no scholar, at least, will die talking about it.
Yeah, like you said, the commemoration of his birth is justifiable if the gathering, they have to talk about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he was the embodiment of all the good virtues that you can think of in this world. But then critics again may be right. Sometimes you go to Gammos and they will say Gammo. And then all of a sudden, instead of them to focus on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his exemplary character, his integrity, honesty, and all the good virtues that really made him the model of perfection that he was, they would deviate from this and be immersed in praise singing of certain individuals. Sometimes they are just